I'm going to be honest with you, Emily. Diligence is maybe one of the least exciting things I think we could do a project on.
Yep.
And yet here we are, wrapping it up, sharing it with the world.
Yeah, that's because for small businesses, so many things, you don't know what great looks like. And that's as true for diligence as it is for anything else. And so when you think about that, like most sellers only do diligence one time.
Yeah.
And anyone involved in the process on their side is only going to do diligence one time. So you don't even know walking in whether people are asking you the right questions, whether what they're asking is appropriate or inappropriate. And that's a challenge, you know, especially if you're trying to also assess whether you've got a good party on the other side.
Right. They do this every day, all the time.
Right.
This is your first and maybe only time.
Well, and everybody's heard like a story about being manipulated in the process at some level, or having a party that's trying to get them to do things that ultimately end in a lower price, you know, and your defenses are already naturally high and you're trying to figure out how to find what is appropriate for them to be asking. Because to be quite honest, diligence is addressing down, right? Like you're going to be asked very specific questions about the company. And when your defenses are already high, it's important to know like what is reasonable. And also from your side, what's a reasonable response?
Thus, this project, Due Diligence Confidently. See what we did there with the do? It's a lot better when you read it than when I say it.
It's a throwback to the first time we did diligence and somebody said due diligence, and we assumed that was D-O,
right,
when in fact it is D-U-E.
So we wanted to empower
anyone who's told due diligence.
Yeah.
And then you're going to know what you're supposed to go do, right? And so our intention is that anyone should be able to navigate the process and have enough literacy to when you get the request list, you know what to do, right? And that relates to a whole host of things, like who's on the team to do the diligence itself, and what are reasonable responses to the questions? Where are you going to go find information that you don't access every day, right? We're asking questions as a buyer about, you know, documentation that may not have been touched since the company was formed.
So I'd love to do then a breakdown of the major pieces of publishing that we've done. We've talked about this podcast. You're listening to this podcast, but home base is going to be permanentequity.com/diligence.
It's also going to be available through the tools section. So on the top of the website, we've got content and then we've got tools. Under tools, you'll find the due diligence section. So on that, there's going to be a breakdown of our approach, and it's organized around purpose, process, posture, and pain points. And so under those 4 sections, you'll find a breakdown of what does it mean to go through the process? How does the process work? And then as you look through those sections, so there will be a summary, but then there are also links to much deeper content, right? And so it kind of depends on how far down the rabbit hole you want to go.
Right. There's a surface level, and then there's links that you can keep going deeper and deeper and deeper based on your interest and where you're at.
Yep.
There is a big element, probably the biggest element of this project, and that is the diligence checklist page.
Yes. So this was a labor, maybe a labor love. I don't know. To the
Do you feel loved when you read this page, everybody? Let us know.
So it's 181 questions broken down into 4 sections as well. So who are you? What do you do? What are the risks? And what else? And so those 4 sections each include 20 to 40 questions and really are the breakdown of how we would go about diligencing a company. But it's not just the question. So we also included context around what that question means, and then also examples of supporting documentation. So to give you an idea of exactly what it means to respond to that question in a successful way.
There'll be lots of audio snippets throughout that. And that's new audio. That's not stuff in this podcast. It's not little chunks we've already published before. That'll be the only place you can kind of engage with different people explaining, hey, here's what we're really asking, what we're trying to know, questions that arise during this section.
Right. Yeah. Mark does a great breakdown on there about, you know, some of the team questions that we ask, again, because part of this is trying to contextualize for a seller that some of these questions may appear abrasive or intrusive, but in fact are, you know, well-intentioned. And so we take some time to explain what the intentions are.
From the main page, though, diligence takes a team. And we built a whole resource for people to know how to build their diligence team.
Yeah, so this was a particular point of passion for me because one of the things that we often find is someone may engage an intermediary or M&A advisor, and that's how we get introduced to them, but they have yet to build out the rest of their team. And so when it comes to getting started in diligence, they're kind of starting from scratch, which to be honest is a little late in the game, especially because, again, your defenses are high. You're already engaged at that point. You should already know who's in your league, if you will, and who you're going to rely on in the process. So what we've done there is we've given you a breakdown of what to expect in terms of costs and roles and how roles can be divided between people in your team, so within the company, and then also people you would potentially hire and why you might hire them and how you would go about hiring them. So there's specifically a checklist on how to hire an intermediary and how to evaluate them, and then also how to evaluate an M&A attorney specifically, because a lot of people will have had a general business attorney, but the point is that in this case, you actually need an M&A attorney, and that may not be somebody you already know. So how do you evaluate sort of whether they're going to be able to be helpful to you?
I think that serves as a really good example of like some of the tools that we've made for this. There's also a series of essays, and I don't really want to talk about each of them, but what's maybe one of your favorite essays?
Probably my favorite one is Lies, Damned Lies, and Honest Mistakes.
Just because of the title.
It was a great title.
It's all
we'll give credit to Sarah on that one. It sounds like an over-dramatization, but it's really not. That essay is about misrepresentation. One of the things that catches people off guard is if something is misrepresented, it is an issue. But oftentimes, again, it may not be because they had ill intent, right? And so this breaks down why you may misrepresent something unintentionally and what that looks like versus something that is intentionally misrepresented, the consequences associated with those types of things. Because again, when you're doing a deal, at the end of the day, you're signing a legal document representing the facts of your company, right? And so making sure that you really think through that and that you are representing yourself well is an important piece of the puzzle.
You mentioned Sarah and Labors of Love. One of her labors of love has been putting together a PDF, ebook, workbook, whatever we want to call it.
I just saw the final this morning, and I'm really, really happy with how it turned out. She went the extra mile of trying to figure out how to make it an interactive PDF, which makes it far more useful for an individual.
It's 75 pages I saw last.
It is long, but it is divided into sections with a lot of breakdown. So the chunk of it is the checklist, and the checklist as presented in the PDF is a table. And so in addition to all the content that exists on the website, there's also a section on there for you to write notes next to each question. The thinking behind it on our part is you can use this as a hygiene check on your company, as diligence prep, and as a note-taking mechanism between team members, right? So you can say, this is where that documentation exists, and really kind of do the pre-prep to make sure that you're ready to confidently respond to things that come up in the diligence process. The hiring checklists that we just talked about are also in there, and they're also interactive. So there's several pieces of it that you can pull out and use as your own.
What do you hope that people get from Due Diligence Confidently as a project when they use it?
Well, I think the emphasis should be on confidence, right? So as a seller, we want people to be confident when they go to the table to engage with a buyer and to go down this path. That means that you need to have enough information and know how you're going to navigate that path, right? And so our intention with this is to enable people to do that. It's not a quick exit mechanism. It's not a dress up the company mechanism. This is substantive. This is how it works information that we're hoping that people can take and really prepare themselves and prepare their team and walk into a deal confident that they can close it.
You can go to permanentequity.com/diligence, and you can find this entire project built out over a series of a few pages. permanentequity.com/diligence. We also have a PDF download. Once again, that's permanentequity.com/diligence.